Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be taking a look at Mia Khalifa. You might know her name, but we're going to go deeper than the surface level and explore her journey and what it tells us about things like self-esteem, overcoming some tough times, and navigating a really complex industry. And for this one, our main source material is an interview she did on the Diary of a CEO podcast.
Exactly. So we're going to break down this interview, find some of those key insights, hopefully make you think about your own life and experiences in a new way.
Right, so the interview starts with Mia talking about her childhood. She grew up in Lebanon and talks about facing colorism even within her own family, often being made to feel different because of her darker complexion.
And this is a crucial point, I think. This early experience of not fitting in planted the seeds, I think, of low self-esteem, and those feelings only intensified when her family moved to the U.S. right around 9/11. Can you imagine being a young Middle Eastern girl in America during that time period? Yeah, it's a lot. She talks about being bullied really bad, internalizing racism, and desperately wanting to just blend in, which is interesting because it's something she actually connected with the podcast host over. He also experienced that sense of being an outsider, after immigrating from Botswana. So even across these really different backgrounds, that feeling of wanting to belong is something so many of us can relate to, I think.
Absolutely.
And that search for belonging and for feeling worthy becomes a recurring theme throughout her whole story. And in this interview, she gets really personal, opens up about a relationship with a much older man. And looking back, she recognizes him as emotionally abusive and manipulative. And this is where I think your perspective as an expert comes in on like low self-esteem and its impact on relationships, right?
Yeah, so low self-esteem can sometimes lead us down paths we wouldn't choose otherwise. We might crave validation so intensely that we end up in situations that are ultimately harmful to us, almost as if we don't believe we deserve better.
Right, and that's where things take a really significant turn for Mia. Her then partner actually played a major role in her getting into the adult entertainment industry.
It's a moment that really makes you think.
She describes being at lunch, just 20 years old, when a man approaches her with a business card, an invitation to enter the industry. But she brought the card home almost jokingly, right? But then says her husband urged her to seriously think about it.
Yeah, so that's a tactic we see a lot. It often starts casually, almost innocently, to kind of lower your guard.
And what's so crazy is the whirlwind that followed. In just a few weeks, she went from nobody knowing her to being one of the most recognizable figures in the industry, an experience she describes as totally overwhelming. And think about that. Most people in that industry are striving for the very fame that she found so suffocating.
It's a critical thing to remember. Mia's experience doesn't represent everyone's experience in that industry, but it does offer a glimpse into some of the darker aspects and power dynamics that can exist.
For sure. And her decision to leave after just a few months shows the power of starting to understand your own boundaries, of recognizing what you are and aren't okay with.
Absolutely. Recognizing and enforcing those boundaries is a huge step toward reclaiming your agency, basically taking back control.
But it wasn't a smooth transition for her. She talks about feeling extremely isolated after leaving the industry, which ultimately led to a bold move, packing up and leaving Miami for Austin, Texas. It all came about from a totally random Twitter exchange with a woman who would become her best friend. Wild, huh? The power of social media, right?
Right. Sometimes taking that leap of faith, even if it seems scary or uncertain, can set off a cascade of positive changes.
That's exactly what happened. That single choice to move to Austin became the catalyst for her to start therapy, which she credits with helping her rebuild her whole life.
Makes you think of the saying like, sometimes you have to lose yourself to find yourself.
Yes, totally. And on the topic of therapy, I get a little extra excited because I'm such a huge advocate for therapy, as a lot of you know. And in the interview, Mia describes how therapy gave her the tools to develop self-awareness, hold herself accountable for her choices, and really importantly, connect how past traumas were causing problems in her present life.
Yes, she describes it beautifully, saying
Yeah.
that therapy gave her time-traveling superpowers, allowing her to revisit past experiences, but with this fresh understanding and perspective.
I love that. Instead of just being haunted by the past, she's able to examine it, understand its influence, and ultimately gain power over it.
Such a powerful testament to the whole process of therapy. It's rarely easy, confronting those painful truths,
Yeah.
but the rewards are often so transformative.
Could not agree more. But even with all this progress she was making, she still had to face the lingering shadows of her past.
So in 2019 and 2020, she had this resurgence of anxiety when the adult film company tried to exert control over her image and re-release old content. It was like they were trying to pull her back into a past she'd fought so hard to escape.
Ugh, it's so frustrating to hear that. So it turns out they were exploiting this loophole in her original contract, this in perpetuity clause.
Right, exactly. That clause is so predatory, it basically gives these companies control over a performer's image and likeness forever, regardless of how their life has changed.
It's really disturbing. And for Mia, it triggered a super tough period. She talks about dealing with depression, needing medication, and even going to therapy more often.
Yeah, it's a reminder of how trauma can resurface even years later, and how important it is to have that support system.
Totally. And she really emphasizes how important her therapist and friends were during that time. But beyond that professional and personal support, she also found this unexpected source of strength and humor online.
You're talking about her TikTok, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing how she's connected with this community of women, sharing experiences and finding ways to laugh through some really tough stuff.
I have to admit, I checked out her TikTok, and she is hilarious. It's really inspiring to see her reclaiming her narrative using humor.
Yeah, humor can be such a powerful coping mechanism.
Mhm.
It helps us process difficult emotions and connect with others who get it.
And her resilience goes beyond TikTok. She's made some really impressive career moves, like getting a role on the Hulu show Rami, and she even launched her own jewelry brand called Shaitan.
Saitan, I love that name. It's like she's taking this word that can have some negative connotations in Arabic and turning it into something really beautiful and empowering.
It definitely feels like a bold statement of self-expression, owning her identity and her journey. And speaking of self-expression, she also talks about how her personal style has evolved. She used to feel pressured to conform to certain beauty standards, but now she's embracing her unique look and feeling a lot more confident.
That shift from seeking external validation to finding confidence from within is huge. It takes time and effort, but it's so worth it.
Couldn't agree more. So where is Mia Khalifa today? Well, she's thriving. She's living in LA, building her businesses and putting her mental health first. And even though she's not dating right now, she has a really clear idea of what she wants in a future partner.
She mentions wanting someone with emotional intelligence, someone who understands the importance of therapy and personal growth.
I love that she's setting those high standards for herself and her relationships. It really shows how much she's grown.
It's a huge change from the insecure young woman who got into that relationship with an older, abusive man. She describes herself now as unapologetic and cautious, which she links to Rihanna's evolution as an artist and as a woman.
That's a great comparison. Rihanna has always been so fearless in expressing herself, even when it went against societal expectations. And Mia seems to be embracing that same spirit.
It's so powerful.
What really stuck with me from the interview was this idea of evidence-based confidence. It's not about magically feeling good about yourself one day. It's about putting in the work, facing your challenges, and building a life you're genuinely proud of.
Yes, totally. True confidence comes from knowing your worth, not from seeking external validation. It's about celebrating your accomplishments, big or small, and recognizing how much strength it took to overcome adversity.
It's about acknowledging the bumps in the road, the wrong turns, even the times you might have totally failed.
Exactly. Because all of those experiences, even the hard ones, ultimately shaped who you are today. And that's something to be proud of.
That's a great way to put it. It's really inspiring, right? Like, even with all that pressure and public scrutiny, we get to choose how we tell our stories.
Yeah, we really do. It's like we're the authors of our own stories, and we can rewrite the chapters as we grow and learn.
Totally. And as we wrap up our deep dive into Mia's journey, I keep thinking, what advice would we give to our younger selves? Knowing everything we know now.
Ooh, that's a good one. What would you tell that younger version of you, looking back on all those experiences that shaped your ideas about self-worth and all that?
Yeah, it's like an invitation to think about those big moments, the lessons learned, and how they might change how we make decisions going forward.
And at the end of the day, Mia's story is one of hope and transformation. It shows us that even after going through some really hard stuff, we can rediscover ourselves, embrace who we really are, and build a life that's full of purpose and joy.
It's true. Her story really shows how powerful resilience is and how important self-discovery is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Mia Khalifa's journey. It was really insightful, and we'll be back soon with another episode breaking down a new and interesting story.
Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.